It's extremely strange. It's exciting. It's actually quite nerve-wracking in a way, because it will be a complete change of my life. You know, it's leaving somewhere that's home, and the future is exciting, but it'll be sad to go. The ones that most people will recognise are the Brexit cases. Extraordinary opportunity for the team to work on that. Just amazing. Whether it was going into the court in Luxembourg, and it's a gigantic court, and we got there early and the place was empty, and I looked around and I thought, nobody's interested in this. This is just going to be dreadful. And then the small team worked away and we got everything organised, and I turned around and the whole place was rammed. And then there were spillover rooms with people, and I sat there, and I've still got a tingle. I sat there and I thought, gosh, our team has done that. Our team has brought this to Europe, and quite extraordinary. You don't think about the bigger picture when you're busy trying to get the case done. The case to see if the UK Westminster Parliament could unilaterally revoke Article 50, and everybody said that we'd lose, and we didn't. And I can remember when the decision came out, I was in a small hotel in Perth. I was about to go into a discipline tribunal hearing, and I read the decision in my tiny little room, and came downstairs and it was on the screen in the hotel, and I just went, wow, amazing. So, you know, there are so many bits of that case that are just extraordinary, whether it comes to the notes that were provided to us at 11 o'clock at night before we went in before a single judge, and we were told not to use them. And we had a powwow, and we decided that Aidan would read them out in court, and the other side blanched when we started reading them, and the journalists went bonkers and raced out of court because it was Boris Johnson's scribbles on the side about, I think it was something like girly blouse or something he'd written about David Cameron. So that, plus the fact that we won in the Inner House, and we won resoundingly in the Inner House, but going down to the Supreme Court was just amazing. I flew down, Cindy and another colleague went down for the morning of the first day, and I went down in the afternoon, and I walked into the court, and it was completely rammed, and you just go, is this real? And having put in so much work on it, it was one of those cases that changed within minutes and hours. It was constantly moving feast. And when I came down to get the judgment, I wasn't going to come down to get the judgment because I had a stinking cold, I think just because we'd been running at 100 miles an hour for so long. And I went down and we sat there, and my junior counsel was late, so I thought I was going to have to sit up front and take the judgment and answer any questions. Anyway, he arrived, and Lady Hale started speaking, and I turned round to Joanna Cherry, who was one of the clients, and I just said, we've won. Before she got to the end of it, I just knew we'd won, and to win unanimously, which I think it had to be, then just extraordinary. And I was always taught at moments, if you ever got to moments like that, then you stand back and you take it all in. And so I stood at the door of the Supreme Court and I just watched the cameras and the people and the conversations, and I just thought, yeah. The Privy Council flew up to Balmoral and asked the Queen to close down Parliament, and she had no choice but to do so. It would have been a constitutional issue if she hadn't. And the government had said they were not going to prorogue Parliament, and they did. I had to send sheriff officers to Balmoral with a letter for the Queen that day. So in short, that's what it was. He closed it down because of all the hoo-ha about Article 50 and everything that was going on at that stage. just a feeling that it was right. It was the right decision. We did a good job. I think we did an incredibly good job. But yeah, it was just correct. You just knew that. Thank goodness, sense had been seen, and you just don't think about. Well, you do think about the end result when you're working on it, but you're so engrossed in literally, and this is where the spider brooch was so funny, because I did feel like a spider in the middle, trying to organise and coordinate and make sure everything was done, and that's mainly what my job is to work with people and cajole and encourage and just bring everybody together. And so just an extraordinary feeling, but one of immense satisfaction. And I was so tired. I got on the train having had one glass of champagne and I fell asleep. I did my traineeship in a firm in Edinburgh that did litigation, was known for litigation, and the month before I joined, the litigation department had blown apart and they'd all gone different ways. So I went to work with a partner who turned out to be somebody who came here eventually, and qualified there. And I knew I wanted to do personal injury work, so I went to Thompson's, and then I knew I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just able to do one type of work. So I then went to McGregor's and did commercial litigation work, and after that to New Zealand to requalify out there. Met some friends in a pub in the north of England in the Kielder Forest, and they were from Auckland, and they said, "Why don't you come out?" So I went out and got 2 job offers. And you know, to be honest, at Hong Kong, agents were trying to get us to go to Hong Kong, and it just didn't feel right. So we thought, okay, why not New Zealand? It was only ever meant to be a couple of years, but we stayed longer than that, and there were only 3 firms that I wanted to join when I came back, and B&M's was at the top of my list. And it just so happened somebody had gone on maternity leave, and I dropped a letter to Fred Tyler and said, please take me on. And the rest is history, as they say. It was more formal then, but everything was more formal then. I'm even thinking on the plaque on my door, it's got Mrs. Motion, whereas everybody else has just got their Christian names and such like now. So it was much more formal, but it was so encouraging, and it was literally like coming home. Having been in different firms in the UK and New Zealand, it felt like I was putting my hand into a glove, and so within weeks I just thought I'd been here forever. Technology by a million miles, in terms of the need to respond quickly, the speed at which matters move and require to be done, which brings good things and bad things. It's always positives and negatives. Obviously, COVID and remote working has brought a massive change to how people work, and not such a bad thing. I can remember going to the partnership to ask if I could work from home for half a day a week when my children were little, and there was a full partnership discussion about it. And if you think about it now, it's just bizarre. But of course it was allowed, and I then had to show and prove to myself and to others that it worked, so that others following behind would get the same opportunity. So those are the 2 biggest issues or biggest changes I've seen. And I think back to the days when you would have your letters typewritten and they'd go through to a partner to review. And I won't name the partner, not in this firm, who would put a red pen through it because it should have been would rather than shall in a letter. And the poor typist had to type the whole thing again. And thank goodness technology has moved on so that you can literally, in a second, change things. Sometimes it's the ones that are very quiet cases, individual cases, I think about a young child that I did a cerebral palsy case for years and years and years ago, and it ended up being a style of working that other firms approached in terms of experts, but we got a settlement for that child at the age of 6, and that child, now adult, is now getting money on an annual basis and will live for a long, long time. It's a massive settlement, but knowing that that person is now financially secure for the rest of their lives, and their parents to know that that person's secure, is just massive. So cases like that, but also the named persons, you know, and the insurance cases I've done over the years for health policies. So much, I'm so fortunate that I've had so many opportunities to do amazing work. A lot of hours, a lot of hard work, but also I deliberately took some coaching to learn how to, you know, manage that, to make sure that you put your management at the top of the list as well as your work commitments. I had a fantastic team. Can't do it without a team. Nothing can be done without a team. And also I think back to the partner I worked for in New Zealand, who always said, make a decision, make any decision. It might be wrong, it might be right, but it's the failure to make a decision that's actually the problem. And make it quickly. And that's really been one of my mantras over my career, is just decide and get on with it. I knew very little, as it turns out, when you go into a leadership role. Trying to learn learning what your strengths are, and then what your weaknesses are, and trying to build those up. I think I can relate to a lot of people, and I think I could use that as a real strength, and I can be diplomatic. I can also be very undiplomatic when it comes to it. I've got a mug on my desk that says sometimes you have to put your spiky boots on and get on with it, and sometimes we've had to do that. It's learning to put a different hat on, putting your firm hat on, as well as, and then take it off for your personal hat. And I think that's, for me, it has been the biggest learning, that you just don't think about yourself, think about the firm or the partnership as a whole, and then that allows you to, it gives you freedom of thought to actually work out how to tackle sometimes very difficult issues. I've loved to have learned more about military law, strangely enough, and canon law is something that I've had to dip into on and off, so I would have liked to have developed those a bit more, but I just didn't. There's only so many things you can do in your working life. What frustrates me most is access to justice. We turn away so many cases that we can't take on because people can't, you know, legal aid just doesn't, it's just not viable, and people can't pay for it. But there's one stream of cases I think back to that we never got off the ground, and that was to do with organophosphates in farming, and just the effect that was having on farmers. And we tried, but we couldn't get the expert opinion so that we'd get it going. My gut tells me there was something really strong in that case. There are cases that you lose, and I don't like losing. I think knowing that you have done the very best that you possibly could, that's the only, and I can say hand on heart, the ones that we've lost, we've worked as hard and done as much as we possibly could there. Often we lose in the first round, and often we lose in the second round, but then when we get down to the Supreme Court we win. So it's not losing faith in the arguments that you've got, and the strength of our commitment to actually trying to see it through. I think it will be a little footprint, to be honest. So many other people have been through and will come through and show their way. If anything, I'd like them to remember that I tried to help other women come behind and do exactly the same thing. And a few lawyers out with the firm have said that to me, so that's quite touching, incredibly touching. Other than that, no, I worked hard, had fun, hope that a few people will remember me for a few years. But as Churchill said, there are a lot of lawyers in graveyards, a lot of indispensable lawyers in graveyards. So knowing that I've done my bit, and if I can get out of here without having caused chaos and created any disasters, then I'll take that as my legacy.